back for our fire episode.
Back. It's on fire.
Everything's on fire.
The
LA's
world's
burning.
on fire.
The world's on fire.
Well, it is January.
Yeah.
That's fire season.
Yeah. When you're in LA, it's always fire season, apparently. It said like it hasn't rained there in like 8 months or something.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad has told me that too. It's just like, there hasn't been any moisture there at all, you know?
Well, when you build a town in the desert,
yeah,
what do you want?
You're almost asking for it. And you know what? The water that we're sitting down the canal, I wish we didn't send a fucking drop down there.
Yep, me neither. You want to live in a desert, you find your own goddamn water.
Yeah.
So, for those of you guys that don't know this inside baseball here, if you're living in some great state that's not California, there's a rivalry between Northern and Southern California because Northern California has all the water where we grow things, actually productive, vote for Trump, good shit like that. People in LA, they don't have any water. So they build pipelines to take all of ours. And then we can't grow anything. And then they claim they're in a drought when in reality they just live in a fucking desert. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So there's a tension. There's a bit of tension. And then for even better, all of us up here vote for politicians that, you know, care about forest policy, care about funding CAL FIRE to make sure that, you know, these forest fires don't happen. And all these idiots in LA vote for people like Gavin Newsom who don't give a shit. Then their houses burn down and they go, "Whoa, what? But I lived in a desert and I voted for Newsom who doesn't give a shit about our public lands. And then my house burned down and now I'm mad about it. And now everyone's fire insurance policies have to triple because California regulates the shit out of our property insurance too."
I wish I was more familiar with the landscape that the fire is occurring in, because I feel like there's a tough rap about, you know, doing like the land clearing or forest prevention or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't envision it being like a forest, you know. I envision it kind of being like brushy, like a thick mesquite brush, you know, where it's like, I don't know, like if they really could have, the only thing I feel like, yeah, maybe they should have had like a 2-mile fire break, you know, from the fucking major highway or whatever, you know.
Yeah, no shit.
And the other thing is, I'm kind of curious on, you know, just going off of what I heard, you know, this is pure speculation, but if the fire originated from some, you know, fucker living in their RV who's like, you know, morning breakfast fire got carried away or whatever, if it was a man-caused or a natural occurrence, you know.
You know.
But fuck, those winds down there are what, gusting up to 100 miles an hour or something? I mean, it doesn't take. That. Yeah, I think it's Santa Ana winds, and they're just, it's like the perfect storm, you know. It's like the windstorm finally hit when there was a fire, and it's just fucking shit up. And as you know, when there's fire and wind, bad.
Here's the shit that pisses me off. Here's what I don't like. Is when you have state agencies that have a singular job and purpose.
Yeah.
And they don't do that singular job or purpose. That, like, when we have our school system, you know, their one job, educate children. What do? Our test scores are fucked up.
Yeah.
Everything's gone to shit. Right. Our schools fucking suck.
Right.
The teachers union runs everything. And that's a broken system.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I don't know a ton about CAL FIRE, but I know that we have the biggest firefighting force in, I think, the entire country.
Yeah.
And we can't stop one of the biggest cities in our it is the biggest city in our state, one of the biggest cities in our country from fucking burning.
I think once the forces get down there, the fire's not going to be that hard to put out. Mm-hmm. I think it's the mobilizing of the people. You know, it's like, let's say for whatever reason, Hawaii got invaded and we needed to get fucking people to Hawaii, but we had to boat them in.
I thought you were going to say if Hawaii caught on fire. I was like, I have a story for you.
Yeah. And we had like boat people to Hawaii to get there because we couldn't fly them for whatever reason. You know, it's that mobilization time, you know, and I think for CAL FIRE to mobilize in the force that they need in the off season of the fire, you know, I think that's what we're seeing. It's the delay of mobilization.
I just think that, how many millions of people live in LA? Get those fuckers out there and fight the fire. Like you have or not just as much. You have another million or something in San Diego right there. You have all the Cal Fire bases that are, the Cal Fire people that are already there. Why do you need the guy from Chico to come put your fire out for you?
I think it's just like, there's just, with how quickly that fire grew overnight, I think it was probably just not enough. They're probably all there, there's probably a misleading amount that goes into it.
I bet there is too, but it pisses me off.
Yeah.
Your one job.
I get what you're saying, but I don't know how much they can do from a fire prevention standpoint, I think it's more of like, okay, the fire started, and I think there's maybe not so much with this fire, but with other fires before, like peak fire season, there's kind of like a resource management of, we're just out of fucking people, what resources we are going to send, like the August complex fire. The reason it burned for so fucking long is because there's no one that lives where that fire was.
Yeah.
They just let it burn. They just sent they had, 500 people on the fire or whatever, 1,000 people on the fire, but they really needed more people, but they had pressing fires around, populated areas that are like, well, we got to go over here now,
And for the majority of people that probably don't know what we're talking about, this August complex fire, there's this part of California, Northern California, that's north of Sacramento, north of the Bay Area. And it is this just massive stretch of forest between the coast and the valley that nobody lives in. Yeah. There's like no roads.
So
there's nothing out there.
What? A little under 30,000 acres in LA have burned for, 5,000 plus structures. There's 1 million acres in this fire, or I think it was over a million.
Yeah, it was over
like 1.1 million acres. 2 structures burned down.
Yeah, and there were probably fire watch towers. Yeah, legitimately. Like the most of the things that burned were just like all of our wildlife that we love so dearly, and some guy's pot fields.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it.
So I don't know.
I get why that fire burned though. Like that is so remote. Like fighting that fire would have been impossible.
But if you look at the acreage of this LA, like I was watching the acreage of the LA fire today, it only grew by here, let me pull it up now.
Yeah, sure.
It only grew by like a couple thousand acres. And I think one of them only didn't even grow 1,000 acres, and the other one grew like 2,000 acres,
Yeah.
So from an acreage standpoint, okay, now we're at 10,000 plus structures destroyed. This says 20. So I think when I looked at it last night to this morning, the Palisades fire grew 3,000 acres. And same thing with the Eden fire. They both grew like 3,000 acres, which, from my view of a fire, fuck, that's nothing, I mean,
except that it's LA.
I understand that. It's just like, but what do you do? I mean, it's on fire now, but from a stopping it standpoint, I mean, they still don't have very much containment, but I'm sure they're just trying to save the buildings they can. And, I don't think we've really seen enough fires in like a densely populated area like that. Like, when I think of the concrete paradise, I'm like, how the fuck are these? Like, once it gets to the city limits, how's it burning down still, But it fucking is,
Same with Santa Rosa.
Yeah. Same with the Great Fire of San Francisco.
Yeah, that was a chemical fire, I think, though, and all the buildings were made of wood back then, which also.
So, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like Cal Fire might be getting a tough rap on letting 10,000 structures burn down. I just don't know what they could really do any better.
And I will put this, because I think the fire marshal is separate. I'll put that. I think a lot of the land that's burned down is private land, so Cal Fire is like not directly in charge of it.
Right.
But dude, like that California has fires.
I think Cal Fire is the lead on one fire. I think they're the lead on the Palisades fire. But I think on the other fire, the Eden fire, they're not the lead on that one. I think.
Sorry, what I was getting at was that when it's private land, it's up to the fire marshal to come like say, hey, you need defensible space. Like they do inspections and will issue fines and stuff. Whereas, Cal Fire, they're in charge of, the public land and the forestry and that kind of stuff. But, if it's, take like the the campfire in Paradise, like I don't think Cal Fire's in charge of like knocking on your door and being like, hey, you need to clear brush away from your house.
No, I agree. And so we had this conversation. We went to what's the town east of Roseville called?
Rockland?
Is that east? It's kind of like more up in the hills. We went there to go look at CNC machine.
Oh, you got Auburn, Placerville.
Maybe it's like Placerville. Let me just pull up the map here real quick.
Loomis.
Oh yeah, I guess we were probably closer to Auburn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting. Oh, it was Lotus.
Lotus,
which is between Placerville and Auburn.
Okay. Small
town.
Yeah. That's El Dorado.
Yeah, up a little past, like north of El Dorado a little bit, but in that area. So we're driving through El Dorado, Placerville. I don't know if we got to Placerville, El Dorado, Auburn, and the amount of brush that's right up to people's houses was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. That place, I think I might have said it on here before. That place is the next LA fire. I mean, we're driving through this area, and it was like the end of fire season, not peak fire season, but mm-hmm. we're like, this place is ready to burn down fucking tomorrow. This is the next paradise. And it was just the amount of overgrowth that people had right up next to their houses, Mm-hmm. And it's just like, how have you people not learned? So I'm kind of curious if some of this LA stuff is like that, because if a fire started where we were driving through and 5,000 houses burned down, I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
Like if you got a fire going, strong north wind, that place would go up like a fucking match, and there's nothing you could do to stop it.
And it's, I know that they do this because I get a notice every year because I have a stretch next, and it's really in the alley on the church's side of the property here, but right next to my property, there's a little stretch of weeds that grow, and I get a notice every year from the fire department saying it's a fire hazard, it needs to be abated, or I'm going to be fined.
Do you get that from the local fire department?
Yeah, I get it from the fire department.
Big Nate Monk.
I know, but it's the church's shit. I just weed eat it. It takes like 10 minutes. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But I'm like, where is this for all of these other places who just have brush piled up against their house?
Right.
Like, are you kidding? How is that not taken care of and abated already?
Yeah, no, and I'm curious if that's, part of the problem in this LA fire. Because, now that I think about this and I kind of connected my mental dots, just driving through this Auburn area, that just with how, the vegetation was around people's houses. I mean, if you got a fire in there, good luck, and mm-hmm. under the worst conditions, you're not mm-hmm. putting it out. You just got to wait for the wind to die down and hope to contain it, mm-hmm. Which I think is probably what happened in LA. But what blows my mind is here in California, we've had, not one town burned down, many towns burned down. Mm-hmm. It's not fucking out of the question. And the fact that you wouldn't have a defensible, area around your home, and I kind of look at me. I'm playing devil's advocate here. There's not the defensible area around my home. Okay, maybe
we live in a valley
we live
that
in
will
an
never
agricultural
burn.
Valley. Like so, my grandma occasionally asks me. By occasionally, almost every time I see her, is getting a little senile. So, Arthur, are you worried about your house burning down? To forest fires? Like, Grandma, we live, next to all these green ass orchards that get watered every day all summer long. Like, no, I am not.
Yeah. And there, and for the house I bought, they weren't going to insure me. I was that one insurance company I could go through that wanted to give me fire insurance.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
like, dude, they're like, well, there's a wildfire near you. But it was like 400 miles away.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I live in a fucking valley next to a
Right,
river.
right.
This place will never burn in a forest fire. Like it could, there's no forest. How is it going to burn?
Did you have a tough time getting fire insurance on your recent property acquisition?
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
I had a really hard time. Like they weren't going to give me, like no one was issuing policies.
Do you need fire insurance to carry a loan?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yep.
So what do you do? Wait, what if you can't get it?
Then what will happen is the mortgage company will issue one themselves that they will back, and it's really expensive.
Ouch.
Really expensive. They go through, they get a deal with the other insurance companies to buy them like in bulk like that, and they can be triple what a typical policy is, and the base policy amounts have tripled. So
yeah, I'd say I'm still rocking with the State Farm home insurance. I'm wondering if they're just gonna pull out of the state, but then I'm kind of like, well, I wonder, I'm just not, shame on me, not even really that familiar with what my home insurance policy covers, You
should look. Yeah. Not that it needs to cover forest fires.
Right.
Again, it's not, but, just for a structure fire,
yeah,
it is important, and I know a lot about it.
I do know I should have my property reassessed versus what is on my insurance dealio.
you can just, I think you can, I don't know if arbitrarily is the right word, but you can get your insurance upped without having the tax assessor come out and look at it. So, but I have a solution to this whole fire thing. I don't ever come here without solutions, or at least I try not to. My statistic of the day. Here you go. As of 2021, latest stats that I have available, because we were talking about Cal Fire just doesn't have the manpower. It's, it's a lot of acres they got to clear for, forest fire fuel clearing. As of 2021, the state of California correctional authorities have 101,389 people in 74 state prisons.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. They got prisoners working on the LA fire right now.
I want, but let me get this out here. I want there to be zero. I want every person in state prison in the forest year round. Fire prevention.
I don't know how feasible every person is. I do totally agree with what you're saying. I've had this conversation myself. We should get a chain gang, clamp these motherfuckers in chains, have a guy on a horse with a 30-06 say, run, okay, have fun, fucker, see you in hell. I think we need to go a little old school on that.
I'm shooting for 100%, not one person in prison. And if we get 90% of the way there, great.
But I think
let's do it.
Out of the people that are in prison, you might want 50% of those people doing fire remediation, and that may be a high number. But even that's a lot of people,
Sure. So, yeah, that would be let's see, like 4 times what Cal Fire has right now.
So I totally, probably more than that, because I bet Cal Fire, most of their seasonal workers are not working. Like all the hot shots and shit,
doing the fuel prevention. That's a good point.
But I totally agree. I won't argue this whatsoever. I say chain them up. 10-person string, 20-person string, you get some bread, you get some water, and you get boss man on a horse with a fucking, big rifle and have at it.
And California just voted for this. They just reaffirmed they wanted slavery in the Constitution.
But I think there's something to be said for, in my opinion, I think prisoner involvement should be semi-voluntary.
I think you should get paid, but not a ton of money, but they should give you money for doing it.
I think if I was in prison, and maybe good behavior or whatever, I'd be pumped to get out in the, not that I know anything about prison life, but I'd be pumped to get out in the forest, and just fucking not be in my cell,
doing back burns, clearing.
It'd probably be kind of fun, really. And hey, maybe even if you don't pay them, buy them a nice ribeye every night or whatever, Okay, you're off the ramen, you're on to the steak.
Sure. Sure. I'm all.
We're gonna give you some beer.
The labor force is there. Let's use it.
Yeah. I think it should be, I say semi-voluntary in the sense of, I think it should be less voluntary when we have a big fire event like this and we need, just need like some line manpower. And there'd probably be a lot more that goes into that. I imagine you need some training, like, or I don't know, scrape this shovel.
Yeah. Hand crew, you're good.
Yeah, you probably have to have some type of, we're doing this, and
That's
you don't
okay.
want the fucking murder, convicts out on your fire line. But
I just say they go to their even riskier fire lines.
Yeah,
we
we're
hot
gonna
shot
drop
them.
you off in the middle of the wilderness here. Have fun. Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Fuck it.
Little GPS collar,
like
you make it off.
Don't be in prison. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I think it used to be a lot more common. If I was in prison, I'd be all about getting out. Like, okay, you make $1 an hour. So fucking what? You're out of your jail box and you're able to be outside, kind of doing something cool.
And who knows? Maybe then you can get called up by Cal Fire once you're out.
Yeah.
And get out
either that or
decent
maybe
job.
like some reduced sentencing, like
Sure.
good behavior firework, reduced sentencing or whatever. But I think the type of felonies should matter when choosing your voluntary fire line,
Fair enough.
But I'm also of the opinion of, some of these pedos maybe shouldn't be in prison and should be more dead. But
but like in this day and age, like, with the ankle monitors that they have,
right.
What are the odds someone is really gonna, get away and like you couldn't track them down?
You ever see like those movies where they have the exploding neck collars?
Like Suicide Squad.
Yeah, like Suicide Squad. Like what's that movie called? Death Race.
All great names for the. We're getting a little out there. We're coming up with creative solutions.
Yeah. Exploding neck collar thing would be, maybe not as cool as Cowboy with 30-06 on a horseback, but equally effective.
I like, and here's the rest of my criminal justice reform here. 74 state prisons. You empty them out. Maybe you do keep a couple for the murders, pedos. You want to, not let on the fire line. Fine. Okay. We'll reduce it. We'll give you 4 state prisons. Okay. The rest of them, turn them into mental institutions for all these people that are living on the street that, need somewhere that, they can be sent to by the court to be, rehabilitated. Doesn't have to be a prison. You can call it whatever you want.
Right.
Turn them into that. And then people can stay there. They can be housed. They don't have to sleep on the streets under bridges and shit.
Now we're getting into the massive prison reform that I think is probably greatly needed. And, let the people, I don't know how many people in prison are still serving because they had a pound of weed or whatever, but probably more than we would want to know.
And I don't understand this at all. I don't get why conservatives feel the need to defend the prison system.
Yeah.
Because what could be less conservative than saying the government's going to fund the lifestyle, of all these people. And like, as a conservative, why do I want to give a bunch of money to the government to keep people in cages all the time?
Right.
They could be, a lot of them could be on house arrest where they're still working.
Do we have any like Texas? I'm envisioning is the Texas privately ran prison. Do we have that in California?
Yes.
Is that included in our prison number here?
That is included. It says located in 74 state prisons and held in custody of private prisons or local jails. I guess, okay. So local jails, you probably couldn't use the people in.
Right.
Because there's a lot of turnover. But
out of the prisons we have in California.
We do have private prisons, yes.
I wonder how many are private,
It's a good question.
Because I feel like traditionally the people that own private prisons are Republicans. Or I'm visioning, the Texas fucking, you got the Texas style cowboy hat wearing prison warden.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how. Well,
which I don't like that either. I don't want the government paying private prisons either. I don't want the government paying for any prisons.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So here we go. California did have private prisons. They no longer do.
Okay.
Which is a good thing, I think.
So,
I'm not a big private prison guy.
And we're here because would you say that we have crime? There's people out there that are performing crimes are getting the release the same day or within a week or whatever, that should be going to prison.
Yes.
I totally agree. So it's like, where do you draw the line? You know, I mean, I feel like there's
in the forest somewhere.
Yeah.
That's where.
You know, but for forest remediation, you know, I don't think that's feasible. You know, you're not going to be in the Yola Bullies right now, fucking in the 10 feet of snow, you know, doing any forest work.
You can do the LA work in the winter. Do the YOLO bully work in the summer.
Right. So I think there's something to be said for that too. But I don't know. I totally agree. I think you'd be lucky to get a quarter of the people in prisons that would be qualified to do, you know, or safely perform that forest remediation work. But I'm also a big fan of, hey, even if they're not in the forest, send them on our fucking roads. And, you know, and we don't even live in, you know, really that populated of an area. And it's disgusting how trashed up our, you know, local roadways and stuff are. And whenever you go to the big city, it's like, this place is really fucking gross. You know, we should have chain gangs of just fucking prisoners going around picking up trash.
Yep. Agree 100%. 100%. Anything else on the fire topic before we wrap her up? Good, quick little episode.
Here's my quick conspiracy theory.
All right.
The problem, as with any governmental agencies with CAL FIRE, and as much as I really do believe CAL FIRE, for the most part, is trying to do the right thing, but there's no real incentive for them to let fires not get big.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone makes more money when they're on fires. Mm-hmm. You know, if you talk to anyone that fights fires, they want fire days. They want to be on fires. You know, I mean, they're the only motivation they really have to put the fires out right away is maybe to keep their job and to feel good about themselves. But other than that, you know, the guys that work fires love the 12-hour days. They make a lot of money. You know, anyone that you talk to, whether it's a private contractor or someone that works for CAL FIRE, they want to be on fucking fires, you know? And it's disappointing, you know, they get bummed out when we have a bad fire year. You know, I kind of was like, you know, I was talking to this guy the other day and, you know, he was like selling his fire stuff because we were having bad fire years, and a bad fire year for them is no fires.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
A great fire year for everyone else. So we'll
call them the fire industrial complex.
Yeah. And it really is, you know, it's a total fucking business, you know. And a lot of people make a lot of money doing it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's something to be said, you know, I have heard some semi-shady stuff about how some of the CAL FIRE stuff operates as far as letting these fires get a little out of control before they call in the boys, you know? And I think there's something to be said too for like the park fire this past year. They had no idea how big it was going to get, you know, or it's like, if we called 1,000 people in within 24 hours, you know, it probably would have got put out, but we called 200 people in because we thought we were going to get it put out, and then it grew to, you know, what it was, and it's impossible to put out. So I think there's something to be said for that too. So I think CAL FIRE gets a tough rap in some cases. I think they deserve it in some cases.
I have an interesting stat for you on CAL FIRE I forgot to bring up earlier. Their goal, and so far they've achieved it, 95% of fires to be put out before they reach the 10-acre mark.
Yeah. And I think if you go on the CAL FIRE website, which says Californians typically do during the summer, or at least I do, and I think a lot of people do.
I did today.
You know, just to check out how big the fires are, where they're at, especially when they're close to us. See what it looks like, you know. I am always mind blown by the number of fires that have been reported for this year, because we're 9 days into January, you know, not
it's 95 or something right now.
Not a fire season at all whatsoever, and we have 92 wildfires already reported. But you know, if you look at the map, you know, it's like, well, that's a 2-acre fire right in the middle of town, you know, but it's like, well, it's still, they reported to the fire, you know, it's still a reported fire.
I just don't even know if that's a good goal though. Like, if you put all the tiny fires out, aren't you just getting ready for the big one? Like,
yeah,
if you don't let the little ones just burn, you know, these areas, I mean,
that's part of our problem. but I think it's gotten to a point. It's it's not so much. I think they're in a tough spot now. I think we need to do that 20 years ago,
Yeah.
or 10 years, probably more like 20 years ago. Where I think the fuel buildup now is so extreme. And once again, not familiar with LA at all, not familiar with their landscape. But up here, we had the real bad beetle infestation. So, there's just a lot of dead trees. Um, so I think anymore, doing controlled backburns um, is not as easy to not just kill everything. Just because there's so much fuel on the ground.
Letting it get away from you.
Yeah. Where maybe if we're doing that 20 years ago when the brush was accumulating, but it wasn't too bad to where it performs more like it's supposed to. But I think the other problem is, 100 years ago when we still had, and you've been up in the mountains a little bit, but I spent quite a bit of time, in our local mountainy areas hiking around. You occasionally walk up on these stumps that are fucking huge, 8 feet in diameter, 10 feet in diameter, if not bigger, from some big ass fucking trees. And I forget what the stats were off the top of my head. I think me and you have talked about it at some point before. What the trees per acre was like when our forest is prime, when it's a healthy forest like it should be. I think we're supposed to have like 60 to 80 trees an acre.
Oh, I think it's even less than that.
Or it's something like that.
I was going to say like 30.
Yeah, it's we're supposed to have these big ass trees that shade out all the undergrowth, and where fires don't really affect them. And the problem is now we have it's like 400 trees an acre or something.
Yep. For reference, a walnut orchard, 70 trees an acre roughly. And that's 25 by 25 feet.
Yeah, I bet my numbers are off.
So if you got big ass trees, you're talking like 20 trees an acre.
Yeah, I initially wanted to say 30 trees, and maybe it is 30. I just don't remember it's been a couple,
It's not much, I can tell you that.
It's very, very, it's a small percentage of what we currently have. So I think all these trees they're all the same size, and they're not really shading each other out or anything. They're all kind of fighting, and they're just so densely packed together. I think when a fire does happen, just roast them. Where our old growth forests, which we don't really have anymore because our ancestors cut them all the fuck down. Just fucked us on that front. They're more spaced apart, but with their foliage was so big and so tall that they just shaded out all the shit that grew underneath them, So the forest bottoms I'm sure they still had some deadfall and stuff, but man, I mean, as walking up in the, if you get off a trail at all, it's basically impossible not to walk over some fucking branches or dead tree or, and you're not just walking over, you're climbing over, I mean,
sad.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, like when we went through the Trinity Alps, we're hiking through some of that deadfall shit. What are you going to do? Bring a fucking dozer in there? Like, you would it's hand crews all the way. And the inmate route would probably be the way to go. But I think the progress, while I think whatever they did would be good, I think it's kind of like you're saying. Cal Fire did, fire, prevention stuff on 100,000 acres.
Yeah.
I think from an acreage standpoint, it just drop in the pan.
Yeah.
But I guess at least you're doing something,
You just got to pick your right acres, protect the cities. I think eventually, if where you can get dozers and stuff in, I mean, along your major highways, half mile in each direction, man, thin them out.
Yeah.
Like, just so you're not just getting them jumping the freeways,
Yeah, I think there should be something like that, but when a fire gets really big, I mean, they do they're doing it in the heat of the moment, but this is just when we got raging forest fire going. But with the right wind conditions, whatnot, the fire line needs to be like 5 miles or some shit. Yeah. I mean, the 1 mile fires jump 1 mile fire lines all the time, and I think it's just with the wind. You get these fucking fire tornadoes blowing sparks and shit everywhere. And You get 30-mile-an-hour north wind.
But they do that over one fire break. But if you do that to every highway, the wind's not going to be perfect to jump every single one. So then you'll be able to corner it, into a section. And
it's also easy.
Just need more prisoners. We can import prisoners.
Well, we can
Oregon has some we could borrow probably.
Mm-hmm.
Nevada, I know, has some they'd let us borrow.
I feel like I'm curious on I feel like I'd be shocked if I saw some statistics on, what people are in prison for. Because I feel like there's probably, I just wonder what the percentage of people that are in prison that I would say shouldn't be in prison. I wonder if it's 25% or if that's way too high. If it's like 10%.
I bet that's way too high these days.
Yeah.
Maybe in 2000 when they were really, the drug war was raging. These days, I would be shocked if it was higher than 10%.
Yeah, but I wonder,
especially in California.
I wonder how many people are still serving like on drug charges.
Probably like drug trafficking charge. Like I don't have a lot of sympathy for like the guy who's in jail for drug trafficking and it was fentanyl and killed somebody or something. But
I'm
the pot stuff.
More like this guy got busted because he had too much weed in his car. And the Camelot convictions.
These days in California, though, like, I don't know, they talked about retroactively commuting and pardoning people, but I don't think
they ever did.
Yeah, you're right. But
because it's a business.
How much this shows how little I know about, what you really go to prison for. But I wonder how, like in California, who is still in prison right now? We could draw a line, say like a 15-year prison sentence. How much weed did you have to have at one point to be in prison 15 years? Like it's got to be so much. I would think it'd be a lot.
I feel like it used to be not that much.
But and then the real question is though, if that's true, why hasn't Newsom commuted their sentence already?
Because the prisons are a business, and his buddies own the prisons. Or
he's a Pelosi
from him.
They help elect him, I'm sure. Well, that's a wrap.
I would say all politicians benefit from prisons, or else they do something about it.
Fuck them, and they should be doing something useful.
Go to prison. Like
conservatives don't want to keep paying for people in prison. Goddamn, do something useful.
My previous statement of if the GDP, or was it not the GDP, but if our deficit increases while you're in office, I used to say you should be eligible for re-election. But maybe you should be eligible for a prison sentence. You serve your next term in prison.
I like that.
For betraying this fucking country.
Treason. High treason. Yeah. Let's go.
I like that.
All right.
I'd pay for that.
That's a wrap. Before